If you've ever opened a DDR layout and thought, how on earth did they route that? This video is for you. Today we're taking the complete DDR3L schematic from the previous video and implementing it on a real PCB. You'll see the entire routing strategy, from placement and flyby topology to byte lanes, clocks and data routing, and by the end you'll understand the logic behind every major routing decision. Let's get started. Now that we have the complete schematic finished, the first step is deciding where to place the DDR memories on the board. DDR placement is one of the most important parts of the entire layout. A good placement makes the routing much easier, while a poor placement can create unnecessary congestion before you've even routed a single trace. The main idea is to place each memory chip so that its byte lanes are physically closest to the corresponding byte lanes on the zinc. If we look at the processor, you can see that the DDR interface is already divided into separate byte lanes, each containing its own DQ, DQS, and DM signals. In this design, the yellow and green byte lanes are connected to the lower DDR3L chip, while the blue and white byte lanes are connected to the upper DDR3L chip. By placing the memories this way, the data signals naturally point towards the correct memory device, reducing the number of crossings and making the routing significantly cleaner. If we were to swap the memories or rotate them differently, many of these signals would have to cross each other, increasing congestion, requiring more vias, and making it much harder to meet the routing requirements. Of course, we're not only considering the DDR interface. We also have power circuitry, high-speed interfaces, connectors, and many other components competing for board space. Floor planning is always a compromise, but for DDR, one of the biggest priorities is making sure each byte lane has the most direct path possible to its corresponding memory device. Spending a little extra time on placement here will make the routing process much smoother in the next steps. Let's quickly talk about the decoupling capacitors around each DDR3L memory. As a starting point, I always try to place each decoupling capacitor as close as possible to its corresponding power pin. This gives each power pin a short, low inductance path to the power and ground planes, which is exactly what we want for a high-speed interface like DDR. However, this initial placement is rarely the final placement. Once we begin routing and fanning out all of the address, control, clock, and data signals, we'll often find that some capacitors need to be moved slightly to create enough routing channels or to make room for vias escaping from the BGA. So think of this as an initial placement rather than a fixed one. The priority is to start with good decoupling, then make small adjustments as needed to achieve a clean fan-out without sacrificing the overall power integrity of the design. Before we get into the layout, I'd like to quickly thank PCBWay for sponsoring this video. If you're looking to get your PCB manufactured, here's a quick look at what they have to offer. PCBWay is a professional PCB manufacturer that offers fast and affordable PCB fabrication for everything from simple hobby projects to advanced multi-layer designs. They support a wide range of options like different materials, stack-ups, copper thicknesses, and surface finishes. And they also provide assembly services if you want your boards fully populated. So whether you're prototyping or doing small-scale production, they basically cover the entire process from design to finished product. Let's finally start routing the DDR interface. To keep things simple, we're going to focus on one DDR3L memory first. Once we've routed one device, the second one follows almost exactly the same process. We'll begin with the byte lanes. We already covered the theory behind byte lanes in the previous schematic video, so I won't spend too much time on them here. As you can see on the layout, I've color-coded the two byte lanes to make them easier to follow. The yellow traces represent one byte lane, while the green traces represent the other. Each byte lane consists of 8 data signals, one differential data strobe pair, DQS, and a single data mask signal, DM. These signals all belong together and are treated as one group throughout the layout process. By routing one byte lane at a time, it becomes much easier to keep everything organized, avoid unnecessary crossings, and maintain a clean routing strategy. This also makes the delay matching process much more manageable later, which we'll cover in the next video. When I start routing the data interface, I always begin with the byte lane that's closest to the edge of the DDR memory. In this case, that's the yellow byte lane. The reason is pretty simple. This byte lane is also located closest to the corresponding edge of the zinc package, giving us the most direct path between the two devices. Because of that alignment, we can route the entire byte lane directly on the top layer without needing to transition through any vias. That's ideal since every via introduces a small impedance discontinuity and increases the overall routing complexity. Whenever possible, it's good practice to keep high-speed signals on a single layer with as few layer transitions as possible. It results in a cleaner layout, simplifies the routing, and generally improves the signal quality. You'll notice that the traces can almost be routed in straight, parallel paths from the processor to the memory. That's exactly what we were aiming for during the floor planning stage. By placing the memory so that the corresponding byte lanes naturally line up, the routing becomes much more straightforward and requires very little compromise. The first thing I always do is simply find a clean way to escape all of the signals from the SoC. At this stage, I don't worry about the order of the data lines or whether DQ0 is connected to DQ0, DQ1 to DQ1, and so on. The only objective is to get every signal out of the BGA as cleanly as possible. The reason for this is that DDR allows something called bit swapping within a byte lane, and that's one of the biggest things that makes DDR routing much easier. We'll look at that in just a moment. Because of bit swapping, the individual DQ signals within a byte lane don't have to keep their original order. If swapping two data bits results in a cleaner layout, that's perfectly acceptable as long as the schematic and FPGA pin assignments are updated accordingly. The two exceptions are the differential data strobe pair, DQS, and the data mask signal, DM. Those signals belong to their specific byte lane and must remain associated with it. Other than that, we have quite a bit of flexibility with the individual data bits. So rather than fighting the layout to preserve the original pin order, I simply focus on creating the cleanest possible fan-out. Once we've escaped all the signals from the package, we can then decide which data bit connects to which memory pin. That approach makes the routing dramatically easier and usually results in a much cleaner layout. Since the DQS strobe pair and the DM signal can't be bit swapped, I usually start by routing those first. These signals must connect to their corresponding pins on the DDR memory, so they act as fixed reference points for the rest of the byte lane. Once those are in place, the remaining data signals become much easier to organize around them. One thing to keep in mind is that DDR routing is a very iterative process. It's extremely unlikely that you'll get the fan-out or the routing perfect on your first attempt. In fact, I can almost guarantee that you'll end up making adjustments as the layout progresses. You might discover that a signal would route much cleaner if it exited the BGA in a different direction, or that moving a trace slightly creates a much better path for the rest of the byte lane. That's completely normal. Don't be afraid to rip up a few traces and reroute them. Even after routing both memory chips, I often go back and optimize parts of the fan-out once I have a better picture of the overall routing. So don't think of this as a one-shot process. It's an iterative refinement where the layout gradually becomes cleaner as you work through the design. Now, if we look at the routing we already have, you can see that there are 5 data signals positioned between the DQS differential pair and the DM signal, with the remaining 3 data signals routed above the DQS pair. That immediately tells us how we need to organize the fan-out on the DDR memory side. We need to escape 5 DQ signals into the routing channel between DQS and DM and then bring the other 3 DQ signals out above the strobe pair. And again, the exact DQ order does not matter at this stage because we can use bit swapping within the byte lane. We are not trying to force DQ0 to a specific physical route or preserve the original numerical order. We are simply trying to create the cleanest possible connection pattern. So the important part is matching the routing structure. 5 data signals in the middle, 3 above, while keeping DQS and DM connected to their required pins. Once that physical arrangement is established, we can assign the individual DQ bits to whichever routes produce the cleanest layout. Now that all of the signals have been escaped from both devices, you can clearly see that the original DQ assignments don't line up naturally. For example, DQ27 from the DDR memory may now line up with DQ28 on the Zinc. Instead of forcing those signals to cross each other just to preserve the original numbering, we use bit swapping. Since these are ordinary DQ signals within the same byte lane, their physical positions can be reassigned to create a much cleaner layout. So for example, if DQ28 from the Zinc lines up directly with the pin currently assigned as DQ27 on the DDR memory, we simply return to the schematic and swap the DQ27 and DQ28 connections on the memory side. After making all of the required swaps, we update the PCB from the schematic. The net assignments in the layout will then change, and the traces that were previously connected to the wrong number DQ pins will now connect directly without crossing. This is why we didn't care about the order when escaping the individual data signals. We first created the cleanest possible physical routing and then adjusted the logical DQ assignments in the schematic to match that routing. Just make sure all swaps remain within the same byte lane and document them clearly so the final pin mapping is understood. Now that the DQ signals have been rearranged in the schematic to match the physical routing, the connections may look something like this. When we return to the layout and update the PCB from the schematic, the net assignments now follow the new bit-swapped mapping. The signals that previously lined up physically but had different DQ numbers are now assigned correctly. At this point, we can simply connect the traces that already line up between the Zinc and the DDR memory without forcing unnecessary crossings or adding extra vias. This is the real advantage of bit swapping. Instead of making the PCB routing conform to an inconvenient schematic pin order, we adjust the logical DQ assignments within the byte lane to match the cleanest physical layout. The result is shorter, more direct routing and a much more organized byte lane. And there you have it. Congratulations, you've just routed your first DDR byte lane. Before we move on to the more interesting part, which is delay matching, we first need to repeat this exact process for the remaining 3 byte lanes. The blue byte lane is routed almost identically to the yellow one. Since it belongs to the DDR device on the opposite side and is also positioned closest to the corresponding edge of the Zinc, we can route it directly on the top layer without using any via transitions. So the process is the same. Escape the signals cleanly, route the fixed DQS and DM signals first, organize the remaining DQ signals around them, and then use bit swapping where needed to create the cleanest possible connection. So what about the 2 byte lanes positioned further inside the DDR packages? Let's focus on the lower memory device where the green byte lane sits closer to the center of the chip. Unlike the yellow byte lane, there isn't enough room to fan these signals out cleanly on the top layer. The surrounding pins block the escape paths, so we need to transition into one of the internal signal layers. On the DDR side, I start by placing vias close to the corresponding pins and taking the signals directly into the board. Once they reach the internal layer, we have much more freedom to route underneath the surrounding components and pins. We do the same thing on the Zinc side. Wherever possible, the signals leave the BGA and transition down through a via almost immediately. In some locations, however, there isn't enough clearance to place the via directly beside the pad. In those cases, we first route the signal a short distance away from the package and then place the via where there is enough space. From there, the process is essentially the same as before. Create a clean escape on both sides, keep the DQS pair and DM signal connected correctly, and use bit swapping for the remaining DQ signals to simplify the final connections. You may have noticed that almost every signal via has a ground via placed next to it. These are return path transition vias, and they become especially important for high-speed signals like DDR. Even though the DDR clock frequency may not seem extremely high, the signals have fast edge rates. When a signal changes layers, its return current also needs a nearby path to transition between the corresponding reference planes. Without that path, the return current is forced to spread out and find another route, increasing the electromagnetic field area and potentially contributing to plane cavity resonances, crosstalk, and additional radiation. I won't go too deeply into the electromagnetic theory here, but the practical solution is simple. Whenever a DDR signal transitions through a via, place a ground stitching via as close to it as possible. In this design, I'm aiming to keep the return via within approximately 1.27 millimeters of the signal via. This provides a short low inductance path for the return current to follow as the signal changes layers, helping keep the fields contained and reducing the discontinuity created by the layer transition. Now that we're on the inner routing layer, the process is exactly the same as it was for the yellow byte lane. The first thing I do is connect the DQS differential pair and the DM signal, since those are the only signals that must connect to their corresponding pins on the DDR device. Once those are in place, I fan out the remaining DQ signals from both sides. I route them away from the DDR chip, do the same from the SoC, and simply try to line them up somewhere in the middle. Again, don't worry about which DQ signal is which at this stage. The only goal is to create a clean routing channel where all 8 data signals can meet. After everything is lined up, we use bit swapping exactly as we did for the previous byte lane. We go back into the schematic, swap the corresponding DQ signals on the DDR device so they match the physical routing, read the updated schematic back into the PCB, and now every signal lines up perfectly without needing unnecessary crossovers. Once you've done this for the green byte lane, you simply repeat the exact same workflow for the final byte lane on the upper DDR chip. At that point, all 4 byte lanes are routed and we're ready to move on to the delay matching process. Now that all 4 byte lanes are connected, we can move on to delay tuning. Let's return to the yellow byte lane and use it as our example. Because all of the signals in this byte lane have been grouped into the same net class, we can easily view and compare the propagation delay of every DQ signal, the DQS differential pair, and the DM signal. In this case, the DM signal already has the longest delay. Instead of rerouting it to make it shorter, I'll use it as the reference target and lock that trace in place. From there, every other signal in the byte lane will be tuned to match the DM delay as closely as required, including the DQS differential pair. The important point is that we're matching electrical delay, not simply the visible trace length. Signals can travel through different layers and via structures, so 2 traces with the same physical length may not necessarily have the same propagation delay. We'll now add control tuning patterns to the shorter traces until all signals fall within the timing tolerance defined for this byte lane. Once the yellow lane is complete, we repeat the same process independently for the other 3 byte lanes. And that's going to wrap up this video. We've now completed the routing and delay matching of all 4 DDR byte lanes, covering everything from placement and fan out to bit swapping, return path vias, and timing optimization. In the next video, we'll shift our focus to the address, command, and control signals, which you can already identify in the layout by the pink routing. We'll look at how to route this interface using the DDR flyby topology, why flyby routing is required, and the best practices for achieving a clean, timing compliant layout. I'll see you in the next one. Before you go, if you want to dive even deeper into PCB design, make sure to check out my school community. On YouTube, I cover the concepts, but inside the community, I share the complete process. You'll get access to over 20 hours of raw, unedited PCB layout footage, including full DDR3 routing, real design files, in-depth layout reviews, and you can even get feedback on your own boards. If you want to see how professional PCB designs are actually created from start to finish, I'd love to have you there. The link is in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.